People often picture the end of the Roman Empire as a sudden, violent apocalypse, a single massive battle, or an overwhelming horde breaching the gates. But that is not what happened. At its peak, Rome commanded the most feared military on Earth and ruled over roughly a quarter of the global population. They constructed miles of stone arches to transport water into the heart of their cities, sustaining populations that felt untouchable for nearly 800 years. If an empire is practically invincible to the outside world, the only way it dies is from within. The collapse of Rome was a slow, fatal internal rot. You get a sense of their extreme physical boundaries looking at ruins like these, stretching out along a natural ridge. By the 2nd century, Roman territory spanned all the way from the distant edges of Britain down to the Middle East. Defending a perimeter that massive required hundreds of thousands of soldiers. Maintaining the forts, roads, and supply lines to support those troops drained an enormous amount of wealth from the treasury. The sheer size that made Rome so powerful created an unsustainable financial burden that they could not afford to carry. To cover those soaring military costs, desperate emperors turned to the only solution they had, raising taxes on ordinary citizens over and over again. The financial strain broke the working class. Farmers simply abandoned their fields because they couldn't afford the levies, and regional trade ground to a halt. When taxes weren't enough, the government tried a trick. They secretly minted coins with less silver to stretch their budget. As the silver content plummeted, the money lost its value. Everyday prices soared, creating crippling inflation across the provinces. A starving, bankrupt population quickly loses faith in its leaders. This economic ruin set off a chain reaction that would tear the rest of the society apart. Faster, more urgent triggered immense political fallout. During the 3rd century, dozens of different men violently claimed the throne in a span of just a few decades. Many of these emperors ruled for only a few months before being assassinated by their rivals, or even their own bodyguards. This constant turnover turned the military inward. Roman legions stopped defending the frontiers and marched against each other in endless civil wars. Roman armies were slaughtering other Roman armies, bleeding their military dry exactly when they needed their defenses the most. Out on those massive, undefended borders, powerful Germanic tribes like the Goths and Vandals were beginning to mass. Then the Huns arrived. Their rapid expansion forced entire tribes out of their own lands and directly into Roman territory. Rome's military was too overstretched to fight them all off. Out of desperation, leaders began hiring foreign mercenaries to fill the ranks of their legions. The strategy had a critical flaw. These troops were loyal to their own local chieftains, not to the Roman government, hollowing out the empire's defenses from the inside. In 410 AD, those internal defenses finally snapped. The city of Rome itself was sacked by the Visigoths. The capture of a city that had been entirely untouchable for 8 centuries sent a shockwave across the world. It was undeniable proof that the internal rot had completely destroyed their ability to survive. The timeline dragged on a bit further until 476 AD, when the last Western emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was quietly removed from power. Historians mark this exact moment as the official death of the Western Roman Empire. But the empire didn't completely vanish. The eastern half, centered in Constantinople, survived for almost another 1,000 years behind massive, multi-layered walls like these. The survival of the East proves that Roman engineering and traditions were still highly effective. It was the specific political and economic system in the West that collapsed under the weight of its own failures. Rome did not fall overnight, and it did not fall to a single enemy. This chart illustrates the internal chain reaction. Starting with the overextended borders, massive military costs triggered economic ruin, which caused political chaos, which ultimately invited foreign invasion. As all these pressures converged, the system simply buckled until it could no longer hold itself together. It serves as a stark warning. No matter how vast, wealthy, or technologically advanced a civilization might appear on a map, it remains deeply fragile. Even the world's greatest superpower will inevitably fall if it allows its own internal problems to grow too large to manage.